It is a concept many misunderstand because they confuse quietness with weakness, withdrawal, or passivity. But true silence, the intentional, conscious silence that arises from inner discipline, is not hollow. It is not a void. It is not what remains when words disappear. It is what emerges when energy returns to its rightful place. It is the space where the mind recalibrates, the heart resets, and the spirit gathers strength that was previously scattered across emotions, conflicts, and unnecessary reactions. Silence is a form of internal cleansing. When you stop speaking, when you stop explaining yourself to those who are not listening, when you stop defending what you intuitively know, your energy no longer leaks into conversations that drain you. You begin to realize how much power is lost when every emotion is spoken aloud without thought, how much vitality is consumed when you argue to be understood, and how much peace is sacrificed when you try to fix situations through force. Silence becomes the tool that closes those leaks. It sharpens you because it allows your energy to accumulate rather than disperse. Imagine a sword that is used constantly without ever being sharpened. Eventually it dulls. It becomes ineffective. It cannot cut cleanly. The mind works the same way. A person who reacts all the time, speaks impulsively, explains excessively, or tries to control outcomes through words alone becomes energetically dull. Their emotions drag them in every direction. Their power weakens. Silence is the sharpening stone. It restores the edge that life dulls. Through silence, your responses become deliberate, not reactive. Your thoughts become clearer because you have created space within yourself to hear what is real and what is merely noise. Silence is also the guardian of your inner world. When you choose not to speak, you protect your emotional landscape from unnecessary influence. You stop allowing others to shape your feelings with their opinions, actions, and expectations. You stop giving away access to your internal state. Many people speak because they want reassurance. They want validation. They want someone to understand them, comfort them, or affirm that they are right. But silence teaches you to give yourself what you seek externally. It teaches you self-soothing, self-reliance, and self-stability. It becomes a shield that prevents external chaos from entering your internal space. This type of silence is not passive, it is active. It is the silence of someone who listens deeply, to their breath, to their body, to their intuition. It is the silence of someone who watches instead of reacting, who observes instead of assuming, who reflects instead of judging. In this state, your awareness expands. You begin to notice the subtle cues in your environment, the unspoken intentions in others, the patterns that repeat in your life. You start to understand that most answers do not come from speaking. They come from perceiving. Silence strengthens perception, and perception strengthens wisdom. Another dimension of silence is restraint, not because you have nothing to say, but because not everything deserves your voice. You begin to understand that reacting is optional, that responding is a choice, that giving your opinion is not always necessary. Silence becomes a strategy, not an escape. It becomes a way to navigate life without being pulled into conflicts that serve no purpose or conversations that go nowhere. Through this restraint, your presence becomes stronger. When you do speak, people listen more because your words are not drowned in a flood of constant expression. Your voice carries weight precisely because it is not used recklessly. Silence also reveals the truth about yourself. When you stop talking, you are forced to confront what is happening inside you. Many people fill their days with noise, conversations, distractions, explanations, because it keeps them from hearing their own internal dialogue. Silence exposes the thoughts you avoid, the emotions you suppress, the boundaries you cross, and the fears you deny. It brings all of these things to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to give you the opportunity to understand and refine them. This is where sharpening happens, in the willingness to face yourself honestly. The sharpening of inner energy through silence is a process that strengthens emotional discipline. When you remain silent in moments where you once would have reacted impulsively, you begin to build inner strength. Every time you choose silence over emotional chaos, you are training your internal system to stay grounded. You are conditioning your mind to remain calm even when the situation is not. Eventually, this discipline becomes second nature. Over time, silence strengthens the nervous system, slows down the emotional response, and restores control to the one place where control truly exists within yourself. Silence also shifts how others perceive you. People can sense inner strength even when it is unspoken. When your energy becomes sharp-centered and contained, others feel it. They notice that you do not react the way you once did. They notice that their words no longer provoke you. They notice that your value is no longer tied to their attention or approval. Silence creates a boundary that is both gentle and powerful. It says, without words, that you are no longer available for emotional chaos, disrespect, or situations that drain your energy. It communicates strength more effectively than any explanation could. It is a return to your internal authority, a reclaiming of the energy that was once scattered across people, situations, and expectations that were never truly in your hands. Emotional dependence grows whenever your inner world becomes tied to external conditions, someone's responses, someone's validation, someone's attention, someone's approval. But when you consciously turn that attention inward, when you place your focus on your own thoughts, your own habits, your own growth, everything begins to shift. You pull your energy back into yourself, and the emotional weight you once carried begins to dissolve. Self-focus is not selfishness, it is self-restoration. Many people fear turning inward because they believe it means abandoning others or shutting out the world. But in reality, self-focus is the act of stabilizing yourself so that your interactions with the world are no longer rooted in need, anxiety, or fear. When your sense of peace depends on someone else's behavior, you live in a constant state of internal unpredictability. You wait for messages to feel reassured. You seek affirmation to feel valuable. You react to moods, silence, distance, or attention because your emotional state is tied to the movement of others. This is the essence of emotional dependence. But the moment you shift your focus back to yourself, you begin to cut the invisible cords that bind you to others' actions. You start to see that the only things you truly control are your thoughts, your reactions, your decisions, and your direction. This realization is liberating. It breaks the illusion that external situations determine your peace. It weakens the belief that you need something outside yourself in order to feel whole. Self-focus also brings clarity. When your attention is on others, your perspective becomes distorted. You become overly concerned with what they think, how they feel, what they want, and what they might do next. This creates mental confusion and emotional instability. But when you turn inward and examine your own mind, everything becomes clear. You begin to understand your own patterns, why you react the way you do, why certain behaviors trigger you, why certain relationships drain you. This internal clarity dissolves emotional dependence because it reveals where your power truly lies, and it is never outside yourself. The more you focus on yourself, the more grounded you become. You start investing in your own well-being. You strengthen your emotional core. You build habits that support your inner world. Habits like reflection, discipline, stillness, and self-respect. These habits slowly replace the old dependency patterns. You become less reactive, less anxious, less attached to outcomes you cannot control. Instead, you develop inner steadiness. The mind begins to calm because it is no longer pulled in every direction by external forces. This calmness becomes a foundation, a sanctuary that no one can disturb unless you allow them to. Self-focus also teaches you that emotional security must come from within. When you depend on others to soothe your insecurities, you reinforce the belief that you cannot regulate yourself. But when you learn to sit with your emotions, to observe them rather than suppress them, you build emotional resilience. This resilience weakens the need for reassurance from others. You no longer fall apart when someone withdraws their attention. You no longer collapse under the weight of silence. You no longer overextend yourself just to keep someone close. Instead, you learn to comfort yourself, support yourself, and stabilize yourself. With self-focus comes emotional independence, and emotional independence transforms everything. Your relationships shift because you stop approaching them from a place of need and begin approaching them from a place of strength. You no longer chase connections or bend your boundaries to maintain someone's presence. You interact with others because you choose to, not because you fear losing them. This creates healthier connections, stronger, more balanced, and rooted in genuine respect rather than unconscious dependence. Self-focus also upgrades your self-worth. When you stop prioritizing others over your own well-being, the mind learns a new truth that your value does not depend on someone else's recognition. You begin to see yourself clearly, not through the lens of others' reactions, but through the lens of your own growth. You start to invest in yourself, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. And every improvement reinforces the internal message that you are not defined by who stays, who leaves, or who notices you. The more you focus on yourself, the more your energy amplifies. Others feel this shift. When you are centered, you no longer chase or react emotionally. You move with purpose. You speak with clarity. You set boundaries without fear. You express needs without desperation. This calm confidence naturally changes how people respond to you. Emotional independence commands respect without demanding it. Self-focus becomes the quiet force that alters the dynamics in your relationships, your work, and your decisions. And as your mind continues to realign with what you can control, the unnecessary pressures fall away. The chaos loses its power. The fear loses its strength. The anxiety loses its grip. Because your energy is no longer tied to unpredictable external forces. It is rooted within you, steady, sharp, and self-directed. This is a truth that is often misunderstood because many believe that constant pursuit, endless effort, and visible attachment are the ways to be recognized and appreciated. Society tells us that persistence means proving worth, that attention must be earned through relentless engagement, that people will only notice what you do if you are always in motion, always speaking, always seeking approval. But the deeper reality is the opposite. The act of chasing can obscure your value because it signals need rather than presence, desire rather than completeness, dependence rather than strength. When you release the chase, you create space for recognition, not by force, not through pleading, but by simply standing in your own power, grounded, silent, and self-contained. Chasing is often rooted in insecurity. It is the belief that someone's attention validates your existence, that their approval confirms your worth. When you chase, you expend energy outside yourself, looking for affirmation that can never truly come from another person. You try to fill a void in yourself with the presence of someone else, and in doing so, you lose the subtle magnetism that comes from completeness. You become visible, yes, but visible through need, not through essence. People sense this energy. They sense attachment, dependency, urgency. And human beings are instinctively drawn to stability, balance, and self-possession, not to the constant pull of someone seeking reassurance. When the chase stops, a subtle transformation occurs. The energy that was previously scattered outward is returned inward, becoming concentrated, sharp, and magnetic. This is when others begin to notice. When you stop chasing, you stop offering your energy as a currency to others, and in that absence, your presence gains weight. It is the paradox of visibility. When you are always running after attention, you dilute your presence. When you stand still and focus on yourself, you amplify it. People begin to see the contours of who you are without the distortion of desperation. Your choices, your calm, your refusal to overextend suddenly communicate value more clearly than any words could. Silence, boundaries, and self-possession speak louder than any explanation. The qualities that were once overlooked, the subtle kindness, the depth of thought, the integrity, the quiet confidence, become impossible to ignore because they are no longer drowned out by the noise of chasing. There is also a principle of respect intertwined with this dynamic. When you chase, you teach people that they can take your energy for granted. Your pursuit, no matter how earnest, creates a dynamic where your value is contingent upon their recognition. But when you step back and stop chasing, you silently assert that your energy is yours to protect. This act commands respect. People begin to recalibrate. They start to recognize the balance that was missing, the reciprocal exchange that is necessary for meaningful connection. And in that recalibration, your worth is revealed not as something that must be proven, but as something that naturally exists and demands acknowledgement. Stopping the chase also fosters self-respect, and self-respect is inherently magnetic. When you cease running after people's opinions or outcomes, you declare to yourself and to the world that your time, attention, and energy are not available to be used casually. You show that you understand your own value, that you do not need external validation to feel whole. This internal authority radiates outward. Others begin to notice the calm confidence in your demeanor, the grounded nature of your decisions, the consistency in your presence. What was once unnoticed, the qualities that go beyond the superficial and the immediate, suddenly comes into focus because you are no longer performing for approval. You are existing fully, and in that existence, your essence becomes apparent. There is a natural law at play. Energy respects itself, and people respond to energy. When you chase, you give your energy away and signal that you do not hold it with full authority. When you stop chasing, you reclaim it. The energy that was scattered becomes concentrated in your presence, in your actions, in your intentions. People sense this. They feel it unconsciously, often before they consciously recognize it. The value they overlooked is no longer obscured by the noise of your pursuit. It becomes visible in the way you carry yourself, in the choices you make, in the quality of attention you now direct inward instead of outward. Stopping the chase also cultivates patience, a powerful quality that magnifies value. Patience is the quiet awareness that life unfolds in its own timing, that recognition and respect are not forced, but naturally earned through consistent alignment with one's true self. When you chase, impatience dominates. There is a sense of urgency, a need for immediate confirmation. When you stop chasing, patience takes root. You allow life, relationships, and perception to catch up to the value you have always possessed. And in that waiting, in that stillness, others begin to perceive your worth, not because you declared it, not because you pursued it, but because you embodied it consistently without need. Finally, when you stop chasing, you stop controlling outcomes. You relinquish the illusion that your energy must dictate how others respond or how situations unfold. This surrender does not mean passivity, it means clarity, focus, and alignment with what is truly in your power. By letting go of the chase, you create a space in which natural recognition occurs. People begin to notice what they once ignored, not because you demanded attention, but because the absence of your pursuit creates an undeniable presence. Your value, previously overshadowed by effort and need, emerges with quiet authority, undeniable and magnetic in its authenticity. In a world that prizes constant motion, activity, and noise, stillness is often mistaken for stagnation or weakness. People fear silence because it exposes the layers of reality they would rather avoid. They fear reflection because it requires honesty and the courage to see themselves clearly. But stillness is not emptiness, it is not the absence of life. Stillness is the presence of awareness, the cultivation of clarity, and the sharpening of perception. It is the moment when distractions fade, when external chaos no longer drowns out the voice within, and when truth, long hidden behind assumptions, projections, and superficial interactions, begins to surface. When you cultivate stillness, you create the space to observe your own mind. In the quiet, without the constant interference of thoughtless reactions, you begin to notice patterns that were previously invisible. You see the impulses that drive you, the fears that influence your decisions, the desires that govern your behavior. Stillness exposes the truth of your own tendencies, where your boundaries are weak, where your energy leaks, where your attachments create dependency. It shows you not only who you are, but who you have been pretending to be in order to meet expectations or avoid discomfort. In this space of self-observation, the illusions that you hold about yourself, the stories you tell to justify your choices, the masks you wear to protect vulnerability, start to fall away. You begin to recognize the unfiltered essence of your character, and in doing so, you gain power over yourself because clarity always precedes mastery. Stillness also reveals truth about others. When we are in constant motion, talking, reacting, performing, chasing, we rarely have the opportunity to observe the true nature of those around us. Relationships can be clouded by assumptions, projections, and the narratives we create in our minds. But when you step back and allow yourself to simply observe, the layers begin to peel away. You notice who respects your presence without demands, who honors boundaries without reminders, who communicates from integrity rather than habit or convenience. You notice patterns in behavior, how someone reacts under pressure, what motivates their decisions, how they handle disappointment and success. In stillness, you become aware not through confrontation or conflict, but through careful attention and measured perception. The truth of another person is not discovered through words alone, but through the consistency of their actions and the energy they bring into your space. Stillness also exposes the truth about the relationship itself. Many relationships exist in a fog of projection, hope, and miscommunication. We often see what we want to see rather than what is actually present. We interpret gestures, words, and moments according to our fears or desires rather than objective observation. In stillness, this fog begins to lift. You see clearly whether a relationship is reciprocal or one-sided, whether it nurtures growth or perpetuates depletion, whether it is based on authenticity or on convenience. The silent observation of interaction reveals imbalances, unspoken tensions, and the subtle dynamics that define connection. It becomes apparent where effort is mutual and where it is forced, where love is present and where attachment disguises need. In this awareness, you are no longer bound by illusion. You see the relationship as it is, not as you wish it to be. Stillness also cultivates discernment. When your mind is calm and your presence centered, you can evaluate situations without the distortions of emotion or bias. Emotional turbulence clouds perception, stillness clears it. When you pause before reacting, when you resist the urge to fill silence with explanations, arguments, or justifications, you gain insight. The truth that emerges is subtle yet profound. It is felt more than analyzed. It is a resonance within the body, a quiet knowing that cannot be argued against, a clarity that comes from observing patterns rather than isolating incidents. You recognize which actions, words, or behaviors align with integrity and which are empty or performative. You recognize what you truly need and deserve. You recognize what is worth holding on to and what is meant to be released. Stillness also allows for the processing of emotions. Often, we avoid stillness because it brings unresolved feelings to the surface: anger, sadness, disappointment, longing. But rather than being a threat, this confrontation with raw emotion is the pathway to understanding. In stillness, feelings are witnessed without judgment, without reaction. They are allowed to exist as they are, revealing their roots, their triggers, and their meaning. This clarity informs your decisions, shapes your boundaries, and strengthens your capacity to respond rather than react. Through emotional processing in stillness, you become attuned to the subtleties of connection and the hidden truths that drive behavior, both your own and others. The truth that stillness uncovers is not always comfortable, but it is always liberating. It allows you to release what no longer serves you and to embrace what is authentic. It sharpens perception, deepens understanding, and fosters wisdom that cannot be achieved through constant distraction. Stillness becomes the lens through which you view life, allowing you to navigate relationships with greater clarity, to respond to situations with discernment, and to act from a place of grounded awareness rather than impulsive reaction. Through the cultivation of stillness, truth about yourself, about others, and about the relationship becomes evident in ways that words alone cannot convey. It teaches patience, observation, and self-mastery, and it reveals the subtle patterns that determine the quality of connection and the depth of understanding, guiding your choices and interactions in a manner that is aligned, intentional, and deeply conscious in a world that often equates strength with outward expression, loudness, and visible action. The quiet mastery of emotion is frequently overlooked. Yet emotional discipline is not weakness, it is not denial of feeling, nor is it suppression. It is the conscious cultivation of inner control, the ability to remain steady regardless of external circumstances, and the choice to respond from clarity rather than impulse. While a reaction is fleeting, momentary, and often dictated by temporary feelings, discipline shapes outcomes over time. It creates a presence that is measured, impactful, and magnetic because it is rooted in awareness and self-possession rather than in need or compulsion. Emotional discipline begins with awareness. It requires a woman to observe her own mind and body, to notice what triggers certain responses, and to understand the origin of her feelings. Anger, frustration, jealousy, or anxiety are not merely emotional reactions. They are signals, indicators of unmet needs, past wounds, or misaligned expectations. A woman who practices emotional discipline does not allow these signals to dictate her actions. She notices them, acknowledges them, and chooses whether or not to act on them. In this way, her power lies not in the visible intensity of a reaction, but in the intentional space she creates between stimulus and response. That space becomes the arena in which her strength manifests quietly but unmistakably. Reactions are often driven by ego, desire, or fear. When a woman reacts impulsively, she hands her energy to the situation or the person who provoked it. She allows the external world to dictate her internal state, and in doing so, she dilutes her own power. Emotional discipline, on the other hand, reverses this dynamic. She maintains sovereignty over her energy, deciding where and how to invest it. Her calmness in the face of provocation signals an unshakable presence. Others may attempt to rattle her, to elicit a response, or to manipulate her through emotion. But she remains centered. Her discipline conveys far more than words or gestures ever could, because it is rooted in self, command rather than in a reactive performance. This discipline also transforms relationships. A woman who responds rather than reacts sets a standard for how she is treated. Emotional restraint communicates boundaries without the need for confrontation. It demonstrates that her energy is valuable, that she will not allow it to be wasted on conflict, manipulation, or chaos. Those around her learn quickly that respect, patience, and consideration are not optional, they are required to engage with her fully. This subtle form of authority is far more powerful than any argument or confrontation because it shapes the behavior of others without force. Her calmness, self-possession, and clarity compel recognition, respect, and even admiration. Emotional discipline becomes an unspoken law that governs interactions and maintains her dignity. Furthermore, emotional discipline enhances clarity of thought and decision-making. When emotions are unchecked, judgment becomes clouded, decisions are reactive, and consequences are often regrettable. By maintaining composure, a woman is able to assess situations objectively, to see patterns, and to make choices aligned with her highest good rather than momentary impulses. She becomes strategic, intentional, and patient. Her actions are measured, precise, and effective, creating outcomes that are sustainable rather than temporary. In this way, discipline is a tool for influence that extends beyond personal behavior to shape events, dynamics, and environments in ways that no impulsive reaction could achieve. Discipline also cultivates resilience. Life presents challenges, disappointments, and provocations, many of which are beyond one's control. A reactive approach may temporarily vent frustration or satisfy a short-term need, but it does not equip a woman for long-term stability. Emotional discipline, however, strengthens her capacity to endure difficulties without losing herself. She learns to meet adversity with composure, to navigate conflict with balance, and to recover from setbacks with poise. This resilience becomes a form of power that others perceive instinctively. People sense that she is not easily moved, that her presence is steady, and that her decisions are not swayed by a circumstance alone. Her inner strength becomes a force that influences not only her own life, but also the environment around her. Another dimension of emotional discipline is its role in self-mastery. By choosing not to react impulsively, a woman gains authority over her inner state. She learns to sit with discomfort, to tolerate ambiguity, and to embrace patience. She understands that not all battles require engagement and that some moments are best observed, processed internally, and allowed to pass. This mastery is empowering because it frees her from the tyranny of emotion, from the endless cycle of provocation and response, and from the pressure to perform for validation or recognition. She is no longer at the mercy of external stimuli. She becomes the center of her own stability. Emotional discipline also enhances influence in subtle but profound ways. A reaction may capture attention temporarily, but it often fades, leaving behind consequences that must be managed. Discipline, in contrast, generates quiet authority, trust, and respect over time. Those who witness her steadiness recognize the strength it represents. They are drawn to it, not because it is loud or demanding, but because it is reliable, unshakable, and consistent. Her power lies in her ability to hold herself intact, regardless of external chaos. She demonstrates that true strength is not measured by what is expressed in the moment, but by the control maintained over a lifetime. Finally, emotional discipline allows a woman to preserve her energy for what truly matters. By avoiding unnecessary reactions, she conserves vitality, focus, and mental clarity. She invests her attention in growth, purpose, and meaningful relationships rather than in fleeting conflicts or superficial dramas. Her calm, measured presence becomes a force of attraction, a beacon of stability, and a source of inspiration. In this way, her emotional discipline is not merely personal. It is transformational. It influences environments, relationships, and situations with a power far greater than any reaction, argument, or emotional outburst could achieve. Energy is the currency of life, and where it is directed determines the quality of your experience. Many people spend their energy outwardly, chasing approval, seeking validation, reacting to circumstances, or attempting to control what is beyond their reach. In doing so, they disperse the very force that could transform their inner and outer reality. By reclaiming that energy, by turning your focus inward, you set a new standard for how you engage with life, how you carry yourself, and how the world responds to you. This process is subtle yet profound. Because energy communicates louder than words, gestures, or intentions. It establishes a resonance that others unconsciously recognize, shaping interactions, responses, and outcomes in ways that are almost automatic. Returning energy to yourself begins with presence. It is the act of noticing where your attention is scattered and consciously redirecting it toward your own growth, clarity, and well-being. Every thought you dwell on, every emotion you react to, every moment of mental or emotional investment in what is outside your control depletes your reserves. When you reclaim that energy, you allow yourself to focus on what truly matters: your inner state, your purpose, your development, and your boundaries. This inward turn is not selfish, it is restorative. It restores your capacity to act with intention rather than compulsion, to respond with clarity rather than reactivity, and to exist from a place of fullness rather than lack. As you return energy to yourself, your presence changes. There is a subtle but undeniable shift in how you occupy space, physically, emotionally, and mentally. People sense this change immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. Your attention is no longer diffused in attempts to control, please, or manipulate situations. Your energy is concentrated, grounded, and radiates stability. This presence communicates an unspoken authority. You are no longer defined by external circumstances, nor are you seeking affirmation from the outside. Others are drawn to this steadiness because it signals that you are a person of value, not because of what you chase or demand, but because of the energy you embody naturally. Your reclaimed energy becomes magnetic. It attracts what aligns with your true self and repels what does not. Returning energy to yourself also allows clarity to emerge. When energy is dispersed, thoughts are fragmented, emotions are reactive, and perception is clouded by noise. By reclaiming your energy, you create the space for observation, reflection, and discernment. You begin to see patterns that were previously hidden, recognize truths that were obscured by distraction, and understand dynamics that were misinterpreted under the influence of scattered attention. This clarity allows you to act in alignment with your values and intentions, rather than being pulled by impulse, expectation, or pressure from others. The world responds to this alignment instinctively. Your boundaries are recognized, your presence respected, and your choices honored because you are no longer projecting need or uncertainty. This return of energy transforms relationships. When you invest less in chasing attention or approval, others begin to meet you at your level rather than expecting you to meet theirs. They unconsciously adjust to the steadiness, confidence, and intentionality that you embody. Dynamics shift because your energy signals a new standard for interaction, one of respect, reciprocity, and presence. Those who cannot meet this standard are naturally filtered out, while those who resonate with your energy remain. This does not require confrontation or negotiation. It is the natural alignment of energy. By prioritizing yourself, you encourage the world to prioritize integrity, authenticity, and conscious engagement in return. Returning energy to yourself also strengthens your internal resilience. When energy is scattered outward, every external fluctuation, another person's mood, a circumstance, an expectation, becomes a potential source of disturbance. By reclaiming your energy, you fortify the internal foundation from which you navigate life. You become less reactive, less vulnerable to manipulation, and less affected by external turbulence. Your new standard is one of emotional sovereignty and mental clarity. People sense this stability, even unconsciously, and they adapt their behavior in response. The world instinctively mirrors the energy you emit: calm, composed, confident, and self-contained. Energy returned to yourself also amplifies focus and creativity. When you are no longer drained by constant outward projection, you can invest in activities, projects, and pursuits that genuinely matter. Ideas emerge with clarity, actions are executed with precision, and intentions are realized with efficiency. This elevated energy attracts opportunities, people, and circumstances that resonate with your level of focus and intention. The world does not need to be coerced. It naturally aligns with the frequency you now operate on. Your presence becomes a standard that organizes and influences the surrounding environment in ways subtle yet profound. Another consequence of reclaiming your energy is the redefinition of personal boundaries. When energy is dispersed outwardly, it is often because boundaries are weak, unclear, or unguarded. By returning energy to yourself, you reinforce what is acceptable and what is not. Others unconsciously learn these limits because your energy communicates them consistently. This redefinition is not about control, it is about presence and integrity. The world adjusts instinctively because energy communicates truth more effectively than words ever could. People who were previously unaware or careless begin to recognize the value of your attention, respect the weight of your presence, and align their behavior accordingly. Returning energy to yourself also restores autonomy. When energy is scattered outward, the mind becomes reactive to the external, dependent on outcomes beyond your control, and susceptible to influence. By reclaiming energy, you reclaim agency. Your choices, actions, and responses are driven by your own alignment rather than external pressure or expectation. This sense of autonomy signals a new standard to the world. You are no longer available for manipulation, you are no longer defined by external chaos, and you are no longer operating from a place of need. The world instinctively mirrors this, responding in ways that reflect your newfound self-possession, attentional clarity, and energetic sovereignty.